massive schedule. Going to keep on rolling, mate. If you're still up for it, I don't know how you feel about it. I don't consult you on this, but I probably should. Like, how do you feel about continuing?
Is this what is this, like our seventh end of the year show or something that we've done? Seventh annual, something like that.
Something
2018,
like
maybe
that. I don't
2017.
know when we started. I think we started purely as literally as a talk show to try and bring people on randomly. No one joined the show because it was pre remote, and no one was happy to switch your camera on. And then we realized, you know what, we have to actually have a topic and proper guests and stuff. Otherwise, we'd run out of stuff to say. But anyway, maybe 2026 we're ready for it. Who knows? More randomization, more random people pulled in off the crowd. That's the entire purpose of Crowdcast. So maybe that's something we'll do. Anyway, welcome everybody to Brainfood Live on Air. It's episode 349. It is the final episode of our mini-series review of the year. And in fact, the final episode of the year as well. Yes, folks, we are finishing the series today and giving everyone a break because obviously Christmas week next week. And then we're into that period where basically everyone should be eating turkey and drinking eggnog and so on, and not paying attention to TV or screens. So last one of the year, just want to thank everyone for joining all the way through. It's been fantastic. I'm going to do an analytical breakdown as to how many minutes we've done, how many people have watched, how many comments that have been made, how many times it's been live streamed. It's been massive. It's been the biggest year by far this year than we've ever had. And I'm pleased to tell you that essentially we'll be back in full force next year, starting January the 7th, midweek start. We've got an action-packed January. That schedule will be out in between Christmas and New Year, so I'll let everyone know about that as well. And we're going to be rocking on weekly, bi-weekly, twice weekly even, in many cases next year. So Brainfood Live on Air, here it is. Last show of the year, we're going to review the economy, folks. Everything is downstream of the economy in the work we do in recruitment and HR. So let's have a look at some of the economic factors that have sort of created the environment that we've encountered. I'm here with Adam Gordon, of course, the one and only Adam Gordon. You might as well introduce yourself, Adam. Like, who are you? What it is you do? Like, do people even know?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Adam Gordon. I've been in recruiting since 1999. I was a terrible employee, so I worked for other people for 10 years and then started building my own businesses, and I've been much more successful at that. I really love everything to do with talent attraction. I've got next to no interest in anything to do with assessment, and I'm here to make him look smart.
Amazing, and he does a brilliant job of that. Absolutely brilliant job. He's got a unique skill set,
which is why I've been here for 7 years.
Exactly. Make anybody look smart from a very low base. No, but Adam Gordon, of course, a serial entrepreneur, super successful in the recruitment tech space. And he doesn't talk about it enough, but poetry are the product that's going to enable your recruiters and get significantly more efficient. It's actually one of the challenges in the UK. How do you actually increase productivity per worker? I do believe the UK is quite low on that, but we'll bring our experts in to talk about this. However, tools like poetry might actually help the economy. Who knows? Like, are you speeding up how your recruiters work? And if so, does that get more people hired and so on? Probably does down the track. All right. Let's review the newsletter real quick. Actually, no, let's check the sound before anything else goes on. Folks, we're broadcasting this on Crowdcast, obviously. So if you're on Crowdcast listening to this, can you hear me? And if so, do let me know in the chat. We are live streaming this on a couple of LinkedIn as well. So if you're watching this on LinkedIn, my LinkedIn, or anybody else's LinkedIn, let me know whether you can hear me in the chat and the comments. We're going to try and engage with everyone, by the way. Essentially, Brainfood is an interactive show. That was what it's meant to be. So we want to talk to everyone who wants to talk to us. Criticize, heckle, say nice things, say what you like in the chat, and we're going to try and get back to you. All right, Giles, great to see you here. Thank you very much, Kevin. Brilliant stuff. Thanks, Neil, as well. Ready to go. All right, Adam, let's review the newsletter real quick. Last one of the year, I guess, to review. But did you read it last week? And what did you think?
I did, but I do want to quickly say, when you talk about heckling and whatever, when I saw that Chloe was joining us, I did message Hung this morning and asked, can we make this like Prime Minister's questions and like have our papers rolled up like truncheons and start shouting things and like throw papers in the air and do all of that? And he said, yes, we can.
Yes, we can, but let's not disrespect sort of our system of government so publicly, Adam. I think there's lots of good things to say about having venerable methods of debate. So anyway,
kind of agree. So let's get on with that. The first bit of brain food I want to talk about is, as always, the poll. 72% of brain fooders think that the World Cup is going to be won by England or Brazil or Spain. And I don't think that's going to be the case. And I agree with you, Hung. It's going to be won by France. Although, if I had my choice, of course, it would be won by Scotland. If not Scotland, then we in Scotland have a three-letter acronym: ABE, anyone but England.
Good Lord, that's true enough, mate. I can understand that the Scots. To be honest with you, brilliant to see Scotland there. It's fantastic. Aren't Wales there as well? Are they? Are they there? I can't even remember, but I think
Oh
it's going to
yeah, they're in
be.
the playoffs.
They've got a chance, haven't they? Northern Ireland, I think they've still got a chance as well. I mean, wouldn't it be fantastic to see a massive representation? It's a huge World Cup, and you've got really weird countries, not weird countries, but tiny countries like Curacao in there. St. Kitts and something or other in there as well, like some Cape Verde are in there. So we're talking about countries the size population of a big city, really. So it's going to be an incredible World Cup. We just hope that the Americans are going to let the fans in. I mean, basically, have you seen the latest from Trump? He's basically said, look, we're going to ban people from Senegal and Ivory Coast from actually getting a visa. I think, hang on, mate, you're holding the
Well,
World Cup next year.
we're
What are
playing
you doing?
against Haiti, and if you've got a Haitian passport, you're not allowed in America.
So
Like,
you're
really?
basically playing against nobody. I mean, what a disaster that is. I mean, come
That's a
on.
good point. The players themselves. I
The
mean, they have
players
to have
will
a
not.
Haitian passport to play for Haiti.
Well, I mean, it's chaos. But anyway, this is where we're at, I guess. Anyway, yes, I think
Okay.
France are going to win it. Hugo Ekitike, I think, alongside with Mbappe and that Doué guy on the right hand side. I think that's just an awesome attack. There's just no way they're not going to score like 2-3 goals every game. They just got to keep it tight at the back, and I think they'll do the job. So yeah, France for me, mate. All right, let's have
Okay.
another.
We talked about productivity a few minutes ago. I'm going to talk about productivity now. Martin Redstone put up a post saying, if you automate all of the tasks that are keeping people sane, then you're going to have a massive, he didn't say this, but mental health crisis effectively was what he was getting at. What he's saying is that it's busy work that's getting automated at this time. And that's really the sort of work that gives people a bit of brain downtime doing the tasks that they're doing. Now, if you work for somebody like McKinsey or Goldman Sachs, you've never had any brain downtime anyway. I just think a lot of other companies are going to end up going like this. You're not going to get mental health walks. We're just not in that, environment at this point. We might be in the future, but I don't believe that typical CEOs really want you to be doing manual, repetitive jobs in order to give your brain a rest. They want you to switch on, and it's going to be survival of the fittest. That's the reality.
Yeah, and you know what? Martin actually wrote, I think, one of the most insightful posts of the year with that observation. We all kind of have got on board with the idea of okay, routine, repetitive work. Yeah, we all want to get rid of that. Our lives will be better. We'll all do higher value work. But Martin said, "Hang on a minute. Can you do high value work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 48 weeks in a year? Like, are you really going to be on it to that degree? And doesn't that lead to just absolute burnout? And what Martin's saying is actually you need the downtime. Maybe some of the repetitive work is actually sort of like we've evolved a way to have a mental break. Whilst you're still doing something, you're still doing productive, but you're giving your brain a rest. And perhaps we shouldn't be thinking of ourselves as optimizing every single minute of the day. So I think, anyway, it's the first time I've read that from anybody, and I thought that was brilliant. And it reminded me of one of the jobs I really enjoyed when I was a young kid, which was washing up in a restaurant. Just zoned out, doing like 1,000 dishes, just washing up, just zoning out, no mental effort whatsoever, just manual action. I actually enjoyed it. It was like a lot of relaxing time. It was not making any kind of mental effort. And yeah, maybe we need that. Like, what are we going to do if we optimize every bit of repetition out? It's a really interesting thought. And yeah, I've not read anybody say that. So well done, Martin Redstone, for putting that together. Brilliant
Listen,
post.
I remember that place where you worked, and I had to send the cutlery back multiple times because it was dirty.
Mate, it was my mum's restaurant, so I doubt you did.
Oh, right.
But I was also really good. I was a brilliant washer upper. What can I say?
Good.
Anyway, I was. There's a technique to it, mate.
Good.
All
Okay.
right.
Let's talk about Right, let's talk about the days when, before I was married, when my wife was my girlfriend, and she would let me choose occasionally what movie we went to, or she would come to a football match with me or whatever. Right, that was the same days when Mars bars were bigger, and that was the same days when products like Indeed were giving you a lot more value without trying to take your money and give you less stuff. We're talking about the, as recruitment something.nl said, the enshittification of HR technology. And the example that I know best is definitely Indeed, who are notoriously getting rid of information, putting it behind more paywalls, making you pay for more stuff, and really just like they've got a very captive audience. And when you've got a very captive audience, you can do things like make your Mars bar smaller, or stop going to the football match with your partner, or whatever it might be. And that's what's happened in this
Mate,
enshittification.
I
It's like
was I was wondering where you were going with that, mate.
degradation.
My hand was over the mute button, like until you started talking about the HR tech there. I thought, well, what on earth we going to go talking about here? But in shitification, it's a brilliant sort of concept by I think Corey Doctorow basically coined it, and it was adapted to recruitment tech, and I think it's really poignant in the sense this is just a natural journey, not the natural journey, but it's the journey that almost all monopolies end up going down. Because if you end up being market dominant, there's zero incentive to continue to provide quality service to a captive market. Basically, there's nowhere else for them to go. And so you end up squeezing more, you end up reducing sort of the service level because you know what, the candidates are locked in. There's nowhere you can go. So anyway, yes, Indeed have been hammered by that, but I do think in Indeed's defense, almost every business that ends up monopolistic in that position and kind of insulated from competition will end up going that way. Could be Amazon, could be Google. Google's a classic example of enshittification. All of these products, they need competition. That's basically it. Okay, anyway, let's crack on. We're going to talk about the economy. We're going to bleed in a bit of AI in this, but the main thing is about the economy. And we might as well bring in some of our amazing guests to talk us through it, because you and I definitely don't know enough about this, mate. We're at best, Sunday newspaper reader level, which is not particularly good, to be fair.
Which is
So
interesting
let's.
because for two guys who both have, I think, degrees in politics, it's
Mhm.
interesting that we know absolutely nothing about it.
Mate, I don't have a degree in politics. I have a degree
Sorry,
in
you're sociology or something, isn't it?
social anthropology, mate.
Oh yeah.
There he is with pride, rightly so, mate. Rightly so. Neil Carberry, how many wins are Scotland going to have in World Cup? What's your thoughts?
7.
I love it, mate.
Hey,
That's
look, if we
fantastic.
get out of the group, it'll be the greatest thing that's ever happened. Adam's just glad I chose this jersey, not my club team, because my club team are currently top of the league as well.
I was going to say, Heart of Midlothian, would you believe it? Massive respect to Hearts there. Fantastic. And we have Belinda here as well. Where's Chloe? Did I bring her on? Okay, let me just do some intros whilst this is happening. Neil, why don't you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Neil Carberry, I'm Chief Executive of the Recruitment and Employment Confederation, which is the UK's trade body and professional body for recruitment, staffing and talent firms. I'm also an exec member of the World Employment Confederation, working with similar bodies around the world.
Fantastic stuff. We had a flyby from Belinda there, but we're going to bring Belinda back. That's fine. And we've got Chloe here as well. I think I'm going to accept Belinda, and she's here already. Brilliant. Hey, Belinda. Oh, we've got Chloe here as well. Brilliant. Hi, Chloe.
Hello.
All right. I think Belinda, are you there?
Yep. Good.
Yeah, brilliant. Great to see you, Belinda. Let's do some intros for you as well. Can you quickly explain who you are and what you do, Belinda?
Again, 20 years in the industry. First with Video and then Randstad post-acquisition. And then since 2012, I've been running an organisation called WorkLab. We quite simply and mostly work with enterprise RPOs and MSPs, and we just provide research that helps them address operational workforce issues. It's getting harder because anything that's easy is being done by AI. So so it's just a research-based service.
No, fantastic. And Belinda's been a brilliant observer of trends and instances, able to spot the things that a lot of people don't. So fantastic person to follow on LinkedIn, as is Neil and as is Chloe, of course. Chloe Smith, great to see you again. Chloe, can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Hello, lovely to be with you this afternoon. I'm Chloe. I'm president of the CIPD, and hopefully we've got plenty of members on this crowd. Being a politician, so hence all the MP jokes, although let's really not go there for this. PMQs is rubbish at the best of times. But I was an MP for 15 years and Secretary of State for both work and pensions and technology, so quite a unique perspective there on the labour market and AI.
Brilliant. And you're doing some brilliant stuff right of this moment in this phase of your career, Chloe. So we'll touch on that in a moment. But let's do the high level, I guess. I mean, we're talking about the economy. I mean, there's a global context to this, but there's also a national context. Let's talk about the global context first real quick and then dive into the national. Where to 2025, global economy, it kind of disappointed in terms of growth, didn't it? I think is rolling into the year, the IMF was predicting this number and they've revised down. And I think the same with World Bank. Everyone basically thought it would be better than it has been. Reasons why, I mean, obviously Trump tariff did not help, but were there any other things that you want to make a comment on as to why the economy globally did not grow against expectation?
I'll give you one to start with, and obviously the tariffs and unpredictability fed into this. But I see this in the UK market with employers, but also with their business investment plans, and I think we see it in other countries too. If you look at AI, the 6 biggest companies in tech, their market cap is now equal to the entire GDP of the People's Republic of China. You know, that place that made everything you own. Whatever AI is, and it's moving fast, a lot of companies this year, a lot of consumers are sort of slightly unsure about direction of travel. So we've had lots of feedback from recruiters in the UK, but other countries too, where companies are thinking, well, I don't know what I need. I know I will need something, but I don't know what it is. And I don't know how my early careers are reshaping. Some great work, by the way, by John Byrne-Murdoch in the FT this week on early careers. And talking about the death of the graduate job being exaggerated. You know, graduate lawyers' jobs wages are going up because they're actually doing more client-facing time now. So there is, you know, we don't have to be in the degradation path that you guys were talking about before, but real lack of confidence amongst businesses. And I think in the G8 countries, I think that's the primary driver of lower than expected growth.
Right, really good, Neil. So you're saying basically in recruitment world, we'd call that right sizing a department, wouldn't we? And basically AI has caused us to have uncertainty as to what the right size of a department is anymore in any department. You know, like 5 years ago, you could say, right, I need to hit this number of sales. I could probably say I need 20 salespeople for that. And now it's like, do I need 20? Do I need 5? Do I need 1? Like, we don't know because does AI provide this? So that it creates the uncertainty. Okay, any other thoughts? Chloe, what are your thoughts as to why the economy globally has not reached the numbers we thought, at least economists thought at the start of this year?
Well, I think Neil's right to offer that point about business confidence, and I think within that the geopolitics, you know, loomed really large. So the tariff point is not a throwaway point. It was actually, you know, globally very meaningful, I think. And certainly we saw that in the UK. You know, you can name a number of ways in which that directly affects the UK economy. Something else that might be a factor, I wonder, is the year before this one, 2024, was, you know, basically the biggest global year of elections ever. So, you know, billions of people went to the polls. That you know, overall, of course, that then gives rise to an amount of change and probably regulatory change or anticipatory change of other kinds in a number of economies around the globe. I wonder if it's possible that then there's been a kind of ongoing reaction to that through 2025.
That's a really great observation, Chloe, because in the UK, there was a big pause, wasn't there, for us in the UK, precisely for that reason. It was like newish government come in, there was going to be some big changes in labour law, and everyone's thinking, okay, what were these changes then? We best not like go and hire 20 people before we figure out what that's going to cost. So maybe the anticipation of legislative changes as a result of all of these elections means that, again, it's hit the pause button. And perhaps that means good things for 2026, because perhaps whatever changes are going to be made will have been made by then, and people have a bit more visibility and confidence. Belinda, I've given you the tough one, which is coming after these two observations. What are your thoughts? Do you have anything you could add to those, like wider, to those observations on the wider side globally? Like, why didn't we grow as fast as we thought we were?
I would agree with Neil and Chloe on the potential of AI and the fact that people are pausing and considering, and perhaps being internally focused rather than externally focused, on sort of driving sort of growth opportunities potentially. But then also the legislative change, I totally agree with that as well. And if you zoom down into the UK situation, I think what's really interesting, if you don't mind, if I dip into the UK just to kind of to give the example, the UK has, every single sector has, potentially something that is causing it challenges. So, we have sort of universal things like new higher sort of labour costs, but by sector, there are things that, for example, within health and social care, the cap on or the closure of doors on immigration provided with a problem if you go across into construction. The fact that the whatever the new bill is that requires new approvals for high rise is actually delaying construction significantly within the UK. So the UK is really it has so many different sectors with so many different challenges that particularly legislation is impacting. That there is just perhaps a little bit of a drain on energy to look for those growth opportunities, because there's so much focus on having to right-size your business or address changes resulting from immigration changes. So I think it's for me, with the UK, it's absolutely a case that we've got such a broad spread of industries from which we derive the predominance of our GVA. We've also got an interesting, organisational size mix. So I think we derive something like 53% of GVA from the largest companies, which sounds fine, but if you look across to somewhere like India, it's about 70% of GVA comes from the largest companies. So if you want to drive change by steering your smaller number of larger companies to do something, it's harder within countries that have a smaller proportion of the GVA that comes from those largest companies. And we've just got one other peculiarity within the UK, and that is the high proportion of GVA that comes from foreign-owned companies. So it's about 28% of GVA comes from foreign-owned companies who we have no idea what decisions they're making. They see legislative change, but we have no idea how they're going to react to that in terms of what work they keep within the UK, or whether they're going to scale up in the UK, because they're not UK entities. So that very high proportion of GVA from overseas companies is another peculiarity that is in the mix of why the UK GDP growth is hovering around that 1% mark, and is notably below the US, notably below the OECD average, and way behind the China and India.
Yeah, really, really good. Let's get into the UK because we've got the experts, some UK expertise here in the room. Neil Carberry, go to you on this. REC's been great at working with the ONS and PwC, I think it was, isn't it? You got a partnership there, producing really interesting job. Yeah, sorry, mate. I mean, I'm going to get things wrong here, obviously. But with regards to the sort of data that you produce with regard, it's quarterly that you produce the reports, isn't it? Something like this?
Monthly.
Even monthly. Brilliant. So you could tell us exactly sort of what the state of play is, how all of this translates into job growth. Yeah. Can you give us a high level of where we're at in the UK in over the last 12 months with job growth, perm, contract, etc., stuff like this?
So I'll give you a little bit of quantitative stuff, and a little bit of anecdata. And I like the term anecdata because people write anecdote off, but actually what people actually tell you in conversations does matter. Before we do that, I'm going to make one more comment on the global economy. It's worth being aware that we are at a point of peak political activism for the baby boom generation. So the way that the way that politicians plays to the base assumptions in each country of that generation. So if you think about why Trump lands in America and the Trump point of view, because I would say, as an economist, the tariffs are obviously in the process of damaging the US industrial base, but that isn't what people believe. And the same is true in other countries around the world. There's a bit of a challenge for those of us who work in the real economy to kind of surface the commercial trade-offs that we face. Actually is the basis on which we've made some progress on the Employment Rights Act in the last couple of weeks, where we've actually got into what will this do to employer decision making, and suddenly some of the kind of preconceived ideas fall away a little bit. Sorry, couldn't resist another drive-by. On the data, I mean, it's dead simple. In the UK, whiteboards emptied in 2020, 21, 22, fabulous years to be in British recruitment. Lots of job creation, real scrabble for resources, bit of a sugar rush, too much probably, as people reacted to shortages. The one thing you should never do in a British recruitment firm is baseline your performance in any year after 2022 on 2022. You baseline it on 2019. That was real. 2022 wasn't really real. Since then, we've seen something that I think has discombobulated British recruitment and staffing because it's so unusual. Our recessions go like this. We go in fast, we go in hard, we go in deep, and then we come out quickly. You know, the phrase has always been first in, first out as a sector. What we've seen since then in our data is just a long period of gentle contraction, less so in temp than in perm. I think that started to change in September. So this is my Christmas optimism for you, and it's mostly anecdata. But November was slow, early December was slow. That was budget stuff, and I have a whole ream of opinions about why you would spend 6 weeks talking up the end of the world in your budget and then not do anything the like, and what it does to people's confidence, going back to the point I made earlier. But actually, September, October were reasonably positive for most firms. And I do think that the data is starting to suggest that firms are going to have to make some decisions about their hiring plans. You can't hold off and say, I will do it all forever. So I'm quite positive looking forward into 2026, because we've got a big survey of hiring companies. It's the biggest in the country. And it has been really quite positive for about a year now. The challenge is getting people to have confidence to take action. So I think that will start to pick up. But the story for the last 2 years has really been a weakening market. And a lot of the fact that people in the market feel that their resilience has been flagging a bit is because we're just not used to a period where our economic cycle is much longer. Usually it's short and really brutal. And this time it's been chronic rather than critical.
Yeah, really, really good. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, say something that backs up Neil's anecdata, and it's anecdata of my own, which is that taking a recruitment technology startup product into the market, it was September and October where I had a real spike in sales activity after having had a very quiet sort of year, most of the year. And I don't know if this is a coincidence or not, but most of the enterprise employers I know, and I know a lot of them, they all started a very, very large corporate transformation around about mid 2024. Mm-hmm. And I believe that's because the CEO got introduced by her or his child to what ChatGPT is, and then decided that they needed to change their entire organization because of that. And a lot of those corporate transformations started to come to a conclusion around about late summer. So it might be a coincidence. It might be it's anecdata. It might be just my vantage point, but I think there's something in that.
I'll check in another one. Just looking at the official vacancy data, we had a look at the underlying data by size of organisation, and there were two areas where actually there's a slight, it's actually trending slightly upwards now, one of which is large employers, so 250 plus, and the other is micro employers. So that small enterprise 10 through to 250, 249. They're actually still trending downwards in terms of the number of official vacancies, but it was really, I was really optimistic when I saw that there were two areas were actually starting to trend up. So again, hopefully that would support what Neil's saying and Adam's saying from their perspectives. Yeah, I think there is a slight uptick there.
Well, what's the theory behind that, Belinda? Thanks for the interjection there. But what's your best theory as to why there's this kind of weird barbell type of shape?
Yeah, so I mean, again, we have to sort of caveat the fact that those official vacancy numbers, they don't include vacancies going out to agencies, and they don't include the self-employed. So, you know, these are employer to employee, including temporary employee vacancies where they're actually seeking somebody from the open market. So I think, you know, for quite a long period now, you know, people have perhaps been focusing more on retention than and also internal mobility, rather than always looking for somebody from outside, or you know, they are, you know, getting more pressed in terms of their digital transformations, in terms of their ideas for where they're going with, you know, that sort of roadmap. And they're actually, you know, now realizing that they need some skills that they don't have within the organization. So it's only a tiny little uptick in both of those areas, but it's just encouraging. And for me, it sort of says, yeah, okay, we need people now. We've let people go probably more by natural wastage than we have by redundancy. But actually, now that we've kind of had that period of letting things sort of slowly wind down a little bit, now we know who we need, and we go back to the market to go and find them.
And we've always had a need in the country, haven't we? I mean, every country is the same. There's like, obviously we want more job growth, we need more jobs being produced, but actually there's always been like tons of sectors where we've been desperate for labor, really for a decade plus. I mean, you look at construction, you look at all the healthcare sort of vacancies, teaching, no one can hire a driver, all this type of, you know, we don't have I mean, I was in a restaurant yesterday, people can't hire serving staff, they can't hire wait staff. There's a desperate demand for it. And we've got a problem with sort of a large number of underemployed, don't we, Chloe? I think you mentioned a big number to me when we had dinner a couple of months or so ago. Can you tell us a little bit more about this phenomena of unemployed versus underemployed, and what's particular about the UK with this situation?
Yeah, gladly I will, and I really agree with your point that there are sectors where this really shows. So, for example, particularly in my mind are the manufacturing sector, which, you know, can total up this problem to actually many billions of pounds of lost output over a number of years of having not been able to fill vacancies to the extent that they'd like to have done. And then, secondly, hospitality, as you just referenced yourself there. So yeah, the kind of two key categories that we see in the labour market statistics are employment and unemployment, and then activity and inactivity. And so if you were watching the employment rate last week, you'll have seen that goes up very slightly to 5%. That's a worry, but it's dwarfed by the inactivity rate. So in the UK, we have around 9 million people who are economically inactive. So you want to take the whole 5% in your mind? Well, actually, this is 20%. This is 20% of the working age population. And that includes people who are not in the labour market for a number of reasons, a number of very good reasons, actually. Caring duties, ill health, studies. And then there's quite a few amongst this who would like to be able to work if the right opportunity can be found. And some would suggest that rate goes at about 7 in right play, you know, underused talent pools, if I can call it that. So people who are there and could form that nucleus of talent that businesses are so looking for and still looking for despite the headwinds. And you might think there about people who are retiring early, or a kind of a Venn diagram of those slightly older workers with health conditions and such like. And then finally, disabled people, which, depending on on definitions, again, actually clocks in at perhaps a surprisingly high rate of the population. So all of those could be seen as underserved talent pools, underused talent pools. And I'm making a big argument about this at the moment and investigating the ways that AI can do better job and support matching with many of those folk who want to find the right opportunity and can be of great help to employers in connecting those gaps.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chloe. Basically, just for the people who might be new to the term, underemployed is different from unemployed. How people kind of measure unemployment is that they have to be looking for work. I think they have to be actively looking for work the last 4 weeks or something. But if you've given up, let's say, or there's another reason why you've decided not to look for work, you're not considered unemployed. You're considered economically inactive, and you're a different category of person. So we've got to be clear what these categories mean. And the UK has an enormous number of the latter, which is 9 million. That's a huge amount of people. And by the way, caveat all of this, I'm not saying, I don't think anybody in the panel is saying that these individuals are not doing anything productive, because I think things like primary care is massively productive. It's hugely vital for society, as a matter of fact. The problem is that it's simply not, if you like, marketized. Therefore, it doesn't go into some spreadsheet and it's not measured. So I think a lot of the underemployment is probably still employment, but it's not sort of accurately measured. But there is also a percentage of people that probably not only underemployed, but they are genuinely economically inactive, in the sense that they're not doing anything productive or useful or even validating for themselves. Now, how do we get them into work? Actually, what, didn't the government roll something out recently about this to say, hey, there's some, I mean, I don't even know what the rules are, but wasn't there some sort of a scenario to say, right, we're going to put you in a job? So it's almost like a national placement thing. And then, if you didn't do it, your benefits are cut. Like classic Norman Tebbit style stuff, isn't it? I can't remember. I mean, I'm just drawn into my memory.
You're right. You're right on some of the levers there. I mean, clearly there is something here about the incentives that exist through the welfare system, no doubt about that, and also the incentives that exist on employers. And we're probably going to come on to the Employment Rights Act and what that does to incentives, because there are for sure some headwinds there. If I understate that slightly, but I think the kind of strategic significance of this number is massive. It's massive. It's massive in an individual person's life. Let's talk about the people behind the statistics. It's potentially massive value to employers if we got this right. And then finally, of course, it's massive value to the state, because don't forget that there's an interaction here between work and health is good for work, and work is good for health, and that. So there are ways to, there are policy moves afoot. You're quite right on that, Hung. The UK government is, in my opinion, doing some right things about this, although they need to be bolder and faster. So one of the big things you'll have seen this year would be the Charlie Mayfield review, and I would recommend everyone have a good look at that, because I think that was actually a really constructive piece of work, with its feet planted firmly in the commercial sector, from somebody who knows what they're talking about, and really focuses in on retention, which links back to some points that Belinda was already just making in this conversation about the need here actually not to just sort of let somebody go straight back out again, if you like, but to be able to really find and secure your talent.
Yeah, excellent stuff. And Neil, I wonder whether you could come in and tell us a little bit about the latest government actions to try and reactivate these underemployed. I mean, do you know anything about this?
Yeah, look, I think if you ask the average British business what their challenge with government is, they'd say that the challenge is in the departmental way things are done. So if you look at the government now, you've got Pat McFadden at DWP, who's all about getting young people and active people into opportunities in work. On the flip side, you've got rising costs coming out of the NI raid, tax raids last year in the budget, and you've got the Employment Rights Act. So some element of how do we join this up is the big essay question for government in 2026. Where's the industrial strategy? Where's the growth coming from? And you kind of nodding to our colleagues who aren't in the UK. I think actually that's a very pertinent question for most of the Western jurisdictions. If you think about kind of direction of travel in numbers in the United States is not positive at the moment, and getting that turned around is going to be a big part of the federal government's agenda as well. Looking to specifically what the British government is doing, the big test is, can they activate the private sector? It's relatively simple because you control the purse strings to get local councils, to get a third sector charity bodies to start doing really sensible things. And there are fantastic things out there. The highlight of my year was being on the One Show for the first time ever, where I was interviewed by Jeff Brazier, who is the most famous person I've ever met after Adam Gordon. And we were talking about a local job centre, and not a job centre. It was set up by local employers and local charities and the local town council, because there wasn't a job centre within 25 miles. And I think if you can get that activation starting to happen locally, that makes a huge difference. Our chair, Michelle Meller, runs a fantastic business out of Blackburn in Lancashire, but is heavily involved with the youth zone there. And she and I visited the youth zone in White City last week before the REC board meeting. There are so many things starting to happen local level up that, for me, the challenge is, how does government power up the people who can really make a difference, rather than impose things top down that end up just becoming a council job creation scheme? Because I think when you get the private sector running, that's when you get the big numbers. And the numbers we've already talked about are huge. I'm particularly worried about young people and the transition into work, and ultimately our experience there. For those who don't know, the REC's run a restart program in London and Yorkshire with our partners Maximus for the last 3 or 4 years. We put 4,000 people into work in that time from long-term unemployment. And the story is, these are not people who could get a permanent job 9 to 5, but what they can do is a flexible job. So again, as part of that argument, getting government to understand that 1 million people went to work as temp or contract workers this morning, and that is part of the solution. And that's really that bit about, how do we make sure the Employment Rights Act isn't holding back the very valid stuff government's starting to do in terms of job guarantees for young people.
Yeah, really, two really good points there, Neil. But we might as well go there with regards to the youth employment side. This 2025 has been a story of, where is the foot in the door type opportunity? Has the graduate career been chopped out? Is AI dismantling a lot of this? Because actually, where we have seen value in artificial intelligence has been to do a lot of this routine, repetitive work, which traditionally was actually the training ground for a lot of graduates. I mean, if we think about our own sort of careers, we're probably old enough to remember sort of a pre-AI era where we went into the world of work. Man, the first 12 months of me doing any job, I was pretty much an office gopher. You're doing all the stuff like doing the research, cleaning up a spreadsheet, doing some, just making things better for other people, for more senior people. But at the same time, the real purpose was obviously to kind of institutionalize yourself in the business and get your domain knowledge up to a level where you could actually become a productive person in that business. Now, obviously, now AI is saying, okay, we can do this now, and the opportunities at graduate level shrinking. What do we do about this? Looking at Adam's point there, he's probably talking about reduce the number of students, cut the university places. Adam, isn't that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, what I'm saying is there's an awful lot of jobs that don't need a degree today that used to need a degree, and there's a lot of entry-level graduate jobs which don't exist anymore and are not going to exist. And an example that I was talking to somebody about yesterday was, I live in Glasgow, where there's a big call center sort of hotspot here. I mean, there's not going to be humans working in call centers in 2-3 years' time. So somebody getting a I'm just going to say a lower level degree. Sorry, I'm sure that's politically incorrect, but people getting a lower level degree, going and working in a call center, becoming a team leader, becoming a team manager, and doing that type of thing was a pretty classic career path for people in Glasgow over the last 20 years. Yeah, it's not going to exist anymore.
Yeah, I mean, is this at that society level wide recorrect? Because we've had about 20 years of basically just shouting at everyone to go to university, and even to the point where we're shaming people for not doing so. I remember that it was like it got to the point where it was a default scenario. You go to college, go to university, get a graduate job. That was generally what people were being very strongly encouraged to do. And this is during a period where we thought, right, the future is the knowledge economy, services, that's where it's all at. Do we need like a massive recorrect on this, to the point where we need to expand, if you like, the value, or explain the value of non-graduate career paths, more vocational work? We've got to level that up in terms of what it means in terms of compensation. We do need skills trades. We need healthcare workers. We need people doing, in the COVID era, frontline work, important stuff, keep society going, rather than everyone just filing in to becoming, a marketing exec or a lawyer or, dare I say, a recruitment consultant. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? I'll open it out to anybody to have a pop at this.
Matt, can I have a first go at this? Because I have a soapbox on this, right?
Oh, dear.
If you actually read what Tony Blair said when he talked about 50% of young people, he did not say 50% of young people going to university. He said 50% of young people getting to higher level skills. We have a really strong university sector in the UK. I think it is really necessary that we keep it because it's the front end of R&D. So if you want more spin outs to drive growth, that has to happen. The thing for me is how we have completely failed to support our further education sector. The challenge is that we haven't given people who don't go to university an option. People haven't gone to university because it's the thing to do. They've gone to university because it's the way you get to higher skills, because we haven't funded FE effectively. So there's a big bit of work there. And then for employers, and I think this is the bit where, and I'd be interested in Chloe's view from a CIPD point of view on this. I think there's a big moral job of work here for employers, which is you can take one of two views about the loss of all that busy work we were talking about earlier. You can either say, well, that means I can go from 50 graduates to 20 graduates or 10 graduates. Right, great. Saves you a bit of money in the short term. Where's your future medium and senior leaders coming from? You can't outsource that. And it doesn't actually matter. To Adam's point about apprenticeship earnings in the chat, it doesn't actually matter whether you're going to higher skills through university or higher apprenticeship. What matters is the level of opportunity. So I think enlightened companies, and I pointed out the John Byrne Murdoch stuff yesterday, should be thinking about, how do I still hire quite a lot of grads, but give them different jobs to do with higher value, higher productivity, and potentially higher reward? That is difficult to argue with a chief executive. But if there's one job for HR right now, it's about getting people thinking beyond what happens in 2026 into 27 and 28. And I think for us as recruiters, we should be absolutely standing next to our clients in TA and HR and helping them make that argument. Because if you are just doing short-term, ultimately you will lose, because all productivity comes from how labour and capital interact, not from just capital or just labour. There we go. So I'll get off my soapbox now.
Can I come in second and pick up the baton of this? I think there is a huge opportunity here for the people profession, and I kind of prefer to use that phrase because actually, in a way, I think there's elements of this that are about traditional TA or recruitment, and elements of this that have then landed elsewhere in an HR sort of spectrum. One of the key points here being that you need to extend your view of talent throughout the whole of your organizational strategy. Just as Neil was also saying about departmental silos in government, there's a risk of siloed thinking if you don't have a proper talent strategy that goes all the way through kind of holistically your whole organization. So I think there are some really key points to be made here at the highest strategic level. And actually, one of your articles in last week's newsletter went right for this as well. And that's the one about rebuilding America's workforce. So, that's worth a read for people who are interested in this there. On the UK perspective, you can see some very clear analysis came out just recently in this year about some of the drags on productivity. So if you have a look at the OBR's latest piece on productivity, workforce issues and demographic issues are absolutely in there. And one of the reasons why you might expect slow growth and slow productivity growth in the UK. So I think there's two key things to be thinking about for the people profession. So one is strategic workforce planning, without a doubt. some of our analysis at CIPD recently about what employers are beginning to tell us that they think AI is going to mean in terms of headcount up, headcount level, headcount down. And you can see this in our labour market outlook. Our key conclusion from that is do strategic workforce planning. You need to be able to do that rigor in order to get that answer and get it, as you say, well beyond the boundaries of 2026. And then the other really big piece coming here is about training. And actually, I think higher education is sort of but one flavour of that, really. You have a giant global phenomenon here. So the World Economic Forum says that actually 60% of the world's workforce may need upskilling or reskilling by 2030. That's only in 5 years' time. That's massive. And that is, principally the AI lens that you're looking through there. So the people professions' biggest contribution, I suspect, in the next decade is going to be supporting that kind of reskilling, hopefully inside organizations, in the sense that people may then be able to retain, good jobs and the berth that is right for them. But in any case, there'll be movement, between organizations, of course. But that's, I think, the single biggest contribution that the people profession could make next.
Yeah, really interesting. Belinda, go to you on the youth employment aspect. What's your take on the state of play here? Graduate recruitment crisis. What do we do about that? I guess. I mean, we've moved on to projecting forward a little bit, but why don't we? Well, why don't we should go there? We shouldn't be fearful of that.
What we see across all industries is that employers are just reviewing what they want from graduate talent. So they're not saying that they don't need that entry level talent anymore. They're just reviewing what they're actually doing. We've just completed a study of the global life sciences market in light of the fact that due to tariffs, most of the large life sciences companies are now saying that they're going to be developing new facilities in the US, and they're going to be absolutely new state-of-the-art facilities in the US. And what's fascinating for us there is even if they design those new facilities, what they'll have ended up with is a blueprint for their workforce of the future. It'll be AI first plus people, but what they require of people will be roadmapped by designing those new facilities that will be in place in the US, by 2030 at the latest. What that means for something like entry-level talent is that, and what we also saw, because we mapped all the skills that people are currently asking for from graduate talent and what they're likely to be asking for in the future, is that they're looking for people not to bring in and train over a 2 to 3 year period. They actually want that talent to hit the ground running the minute they actually arrive in the organisation. So what's really interesting within that sector is you're actually seeing less graduate programs and far more internships, co-ops, as they're referred to elsewhere. And they're really short, sharp 3 months, 6 months engagements, but they're not learning engagements for the students. They're actually, these people are being required to go in and do an internship or co-op and actually deliver something on this roadmap that these organizations are actually on. And they're mostly looking for, unfortunately, masters and PhD students. So actually what it's beginning to look like from that entry level coming out of the university talent pool is that they want people to develop the skills that they need by the time they leave the education system, possibly through interacting with them during that procedure. But they're going to need less of the graduate programs where, in essence, we're training you up, as you said, to be useful. And actually, they want those people to be useful along their academic journey through these short, sharp interactions. And then when you're ready to go into industry, we just need you to deliver. So that's what we're seeing from a sector like life sciences. It's truly fascinating. And you still do have, the large, companies like GSK that are still sort of hiring 250 sort of grad program students a year. But if you look elsewhere, it's really noticeable that actually they're dialing down apprenticeships and they're dialing down first degree graduate programs, and they're dialing up these shorter, sharper interactions. And they're really looking for the top talent that's coming out of the university, and that has so many implications that we don't have time to talk about today. But it's that one sector. I highly advise people to have a look at it. It's such an interesting sector in terms of its transformational journey.
Thank you for that dive in, Belinda. I mean, on the one hand, I'm totally sympathetic with organizations because obviously, this idea that you can carry someone for 2 years and train them up and so on. I think that's probably just naive to think that that can happen in 2026. It's too competitive. The cost of business is too high. You've got AI like literally always as a bugbear on your shoulder saying, okay, we can do this faster. So we have to get faster. And I'm pro internship, but I've got a massive concern about how that is exclusionary to a lot of people who may not be able to basically afford an internship. This benefits individuals that essentially have familial sort of means to be able to support someone to go to a big city, let's say, who's paying the rent for that. I grew up in the Northeast. There was zero internship opportunities there. I wasn't going to get an internship in a big city. I couldn't afford the rent there. So you're going to potentially be locking people out. We've got to figure out a way in which maybe can the employers who are doing internship stick the kid up in a flat somewhere? Can they provision some accommodations as part of this? Because otherwise you're going to have a tier of people that are going to be permanently locked out of any future, and then another group of people that basically, due to generational wealth, are going to get access to all those opportunities. Anyway, so rapidly moving to the end of the show, end of the year even. Let's leave on some sort of positive note. Do a round robin on this. If you could kind of change one thing in terms of direction of UK, one thing that actually no, that's too big. Let's give advice to a business leader. Let's try and get it to a business leader right now. What's one thing that they could do in 2026 that could kind of really improve things for them, their business, and even things at a national level, whether it's like push the marble a little bit forward. If I'm a HR person, I'm a manager of a business, I'm a leader somewhere, what would that sort of bit of advice be? What could they do? Chloe, you got a thought there?
Find new talent pools and do strategic workforce planning.
Excellent. Belinda, you want to give this a shot?
I'm going to reverse it and I'm going to give advice to the candidate. And I think the days of assuming that all of your income can come from one employer are over. So to the point on underemployment, most of the people that are underemployed want more hours with the organisation that they're working for. That's a predominance. But it's not going to be possible for you to earn all of your income from one employer in the future. And we need to change that perception that is what work is about. So my one piece of advice to the candidate would be to learn how to become self-sufficient, to maybe piece together your income from multiple sources, multiple jobs, accept a 25, 30-hour contract within retail and accommodation and food services, but do something else as well. There's loads of other online work that can be done. Take a second job, take a third job. And I think for me, that's going to become the reality in the future, whether you're highly skilled and you're working on a fragmented basis across a number of organizations, or whether you're at the other end of the spectrum and you can't get enough work from the one employer that's offering you 25 or 30 hours a week. So that's my big piece of advice to the candidates is take control of yourself and become self-sufficient.
No, and I think that goes to every generation now, doesn't it, Belinda? Like everyone has got to be thinking along those lines. Never mind just early entry, but if you're starting at the first time, you need to think portfolio. Okay, Neil Carberry, what's your advice to a business leader, maybe a recruitment business owner? What could they do for their business that would help push the marble forward for the UK?
Well, I mean, I'll do that and then I'll do the general one. I agree with everything Belinda and Chloe said. The advice to a recruitment business owner is the way to protect your business is to get the Employment Rights Act into the right shape. And there's only one way you do that, and that's you join the REC and you do it now. Let's clear. I was one of only 6 people in the room that did the unfair dismissal deal, and there wasn't anybody else from our industry in that. More pressingly, generally, agree with what Belinda and Chloe have said. The thing I'd say is price your risks properly, because I think there's a lot of really naive risk analysis on businesses being done right now, and a lot of very short-term decisions being made. So, for instance, if I can get stuff done, and I absolutely agree with Belinda, portfolio, right? But if I've got data from my business being handed down a supply chain where I've outsourced it to some guy and it's gone to someone else, and someone, I don't know, pick a country at random, Brazil, someone in Brazil is dealing with things that are critical to my company, and I don't know who they are, I don't even know if they're human, I'm sorry, you're walking into a time bomb. You do some of these establishment costs that we're trying to minimize should not be minimized, because we should be thinking about value, not price. So in our strategic workforce planning, who are we bringing into our business? Who are we bringing into our circle of trust? Do we know who they are? Do we know that they are not a cybersecurity threat, for instance? Are we structuring it properly? So yes, absolutely, lots of pressure on cost on doing things, but understand the risk you're taking, because the cheapest option is very often the most dangerous option for your business. Oh, and don't have an affair and go to Coldplay concert.
Yes, goodness me. Wasn't that a HR story of the year? But actually, on the offshoring and outsourcing, that is also one of the trends that is definitely going to be happening in 2026 and onward. I did a poll on this, and like 54% of respondents said, yes, we're definitely going to increase the offshoring side. So that is another thing that UK as a unit, national unit, have to think about. I mean, we could be the beneficiary of it. There's US companies offshore to the UK now. There's certain pockets in the United Kingdom that could potentially be the highly educated, low costs kind of option to a lot of businesses. So maybe there's an opportunity there, but at the same time, you have to think about it. Anyway, lots more to talk about, but we are at the end of the show, end of the year. I want to thank all of our wonderful guests for joining. Neil Carberry, great to see you, sir. Have a very happy Christmas, very good New Year. Belinda Johnson, great to see you. Your debut on the show. Definitely going to get you back, Belinda, if you're happy to do so. Have a very good Christmas break. We have Chloe as well. Chloe Smith, wonderful to have you join. Great to have you here as well. We'll make sure we reconnect early 2026 as well. Have a very good break. Okay, that's about it, everybody. I think that's me signing off with Adam in tow, because we've got the rest of the year to get on with, mainly eating sort of sweets and stuff like this. So thank you everyone for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this show. I hope you've enjoyed the episodes over the year. Follow the channel if you want to be in touch as to what's happening next year. We are going to start with a bang. I guarantee you, very excited to see the January schedule. I think we're going to do about 10 shows in January, like a massive sort of chunk. It's going to be brilliant. Follow the channel there. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, follow my page there, and I'll be broadcasting this on LinkedIn every week, maybe even twice a week. Okay, that's it. I'll see you later. Have a good Christmas, everybody. Cool.
Well, I'll tell you what my advice was going to be, because it was going to be entirely contrary to the spirit of the show.
Yeah, what? Give up? What were you going to say? Something horrible.
Ruthlessly AI every single aspect of your business, because if you don't, you're going to be anti-competitive and you're going to lose in the market.
I think we have to do that. I think we have to understand that's true. And that does mean less people employed in your own direct business, no question about that. The question is, look, are you going to be more successful, and does that grow the pie in any way for others? So yeah, you've got to be aggressive that way, and you've got to hire people that have that skill set is another thing to think about. One of the things we'll be looking at next year, Adam, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on it, but like, how do you recruit someone that themselves have got that ability to improve your AI enablement as a business? Like, what skill set, what mentality is that? Trying to figure out what that might look like. But that's definitely going to be a topic of the year for sure. Anyway, Jake Paul, Anthony Joshua, mate.
I don't know. I saw an interview with Jake Paul earlier today, and he said to me, no, he didn't say to me, he said, somebody said, like, is this actually scripted or what? He said, it's illegal for it to be scripted. And I'm looking at it going, I'm not sure which boxing authority has sanctioned this, because I'm not sure anybody has. And if anybody has not, it's definitely not illegal for you to script this pantomime. But anyway, I mean, if it's a serious fight, then Jake Paul's knocked out within 2 minutes. If it's not a serious fight, then there's a different outcome. It's as simple as that.
There is no scenario where Joshua loses this. Right, I don't think Jake Paul can hurt him. I mean, the weight difference is just so. It's like my nephew trying to knock me out. He's 9 years old. He's got a strong punch. He's not gonna knock me out, mate. You know what I mean? He's just, the weight difference is just too significant.
Well, it's not just that. It's not just that. I mean, although Anthony Joshua has lost a couple of fights in the last few years, the guy's an Olympic gold medalist. You don't become an Olympic gold medalist unless you're not a great boxer. He's a great boxer, and he's absolutely massive.
He's too big. I think just physically he's too big. Like, just, I don't know. Anyway, Jake Paul, good luck to you, sir. I hope you make it all right. That's all I got to say. I mean, there is a risk here, but yeah, let's see what happens, I guess. All right, listen, cool. I'll catch you later. We haven't caught up, Adam, but I want to do that. So I want to make sure that, yeah.
I sent you I screenshotted you my calendar.
I know that was last week. Can you screenshot the next week as well? And I'll get an hour in. All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
See ya.